How does it feel to be the target of a lethal crackdown? Welcome to the podcast where we discuss how to outmaneuver your opponents. I'm Faith, and I'm joined with Jrod and his Dudeness. We're going to be talking about the release of Twilight of the Republic, but first, we need to address the recent announcement from FFG. Jrod, would you explain to everyone what they announced?
They devalued all of your Boba Fett showcases. No, but so seriously, they did do that in a way, but basically what they did was suspend, in quotes here, Boba Fett leader, which basically means that he is currently banned starting today as it's recording 11/8 in Premiere Play. So we have our first Twin Sons only leader. Let's clap it up for Boba Fett. Woo! As I said last podcast, I don't think that Boba needed to be banned or changed at all. I think there was plenty of options for people to beat him. I think actually Sabine was more of the problem, and I guess we'll see who was right because Sabine is going to run rampant. It should be interesting. I know many people were happy about this change, and if it helps the community grow because Boba Fett got banned, then I'm happy with it. I'm just concerned that now they're going to complain about Sabine.
I would say I have the exact opposite take as Jrod. I think banning Boba, something needed to be done about the dude that had such a ridiculous share of PQ wins and top 8s and et cetera, which they went over in the article. Just an unacceptable amount of meta share in these PQs. They were just not okay with. I think now it's easy just to say Sabine is going to be rise to greatness, but Sabine has easy enough answers if you include him. Boba was just overtuned. You couldn't do the thing. If he played on curve and did what he wanted to do, you pretty much just lost.
To be fair, I didn't say it now. I said it before in the last episode as well. So it's not in hindsight. That's my prediction is going to happen. Just to be very clear on that.
I think this is one of the best things they could have done. There was a clear specter over all of Star Wars Unlimited, and now that specter is gone. It opens up deck building avenues for leaders that would have never seen the light of day had he still been around. I'm glad they didn't wait for a whole set 3 to figure out, should we do it in set 4, or will the meta rebound in set 3? No, just get rid of them. I think it reinvigorated a lot of people in the community and was a brilliant decision overall.
I would say, first off, insert Hera joke here, because he said Spectre. I was on the side of pro errata, pro weight, and the more I thought about it, the more I think they made the right decision. Suspending/banning, because of the deck building options it opens up, really is a really tough decision to play any other cunning villainy leader, and you did have everyone worried about Boba Fett no matter what deck they were building, and so I think this does open up deck building options. To Jrod's point, and to my point that I made as well, which was that Sabine will now be a problem. Maybe now decks that are less favored against Sabine can make their deck kind of tailored towards Sabine, and that might be able to balance it out, maybe target it out a little bit better. I guess we'll have to wait and see at some point, but after consideration, I think I agree with FFG that I think it was the right decision, just to open up deck building options.
In some way, this actually opens up other aggro decks to win, because aggressive against other aggro decks, they had a great matchup against Sabine, but it was closer to maybe 45-55 in the good Sabine players' hands or something like that. But this will open up other aggro decks to actually maybe be able to compete and have an avenue to try to do something now.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, at minimum base level, it definitely opened up cunning villainy options, because I know I've said it about 8 times whenever we have a new cunning villainy leader, and I'm just man, this card could be good if we didn't have Boba Fett. Even Jango, people are trying him out, and I think Jango's actually pretty reasonable and could take the place in the mid-range green-yellow villainy, because he's very great with Barrage. I've seen some red decks with him as well that do pretty well, some ISB agent action. Asajj might get some play out because she seems pretty rad as well. I don't know, there's definitely some cool options out there that could happen now because of it. I think Grievous also has a little bit of play. I mean, there's just that pool of leaders is now oh, let's see what we actually have now, because it opens everything. And at minimum, it opening up that I don't think is a bad thing. I'm not upset by this decision that they made. I think it's good. I know a lot of people were complaining about it. And always listening to the mob isn't always correct, but I think in this instance, I knew many people who were I go to my locals and play against 4 Boba Fett and I lose and I don't want to play anymore. And it's that's kind of a crappy feeling. One, if you're going to locals, stop playing the best deck in the format. Bring something fun, please. Just a little bit. Think of the new players who don't have all the cards, right? I know you want to test, but test in your own time. Not you're playing for fun at the store for $5. Who cares if you win or lose, right?
It's funny just comparing Jango, because you've got a 3/7 for instead of a 4/7, and Jango does benefit as well from getting fire spray out, being ready. So that is a fun interaction. I really do like that about the fire spray, that it was worded that way with Jango. So it's how strong Boba is in comparison to Jango. That one extra power being very important, and his ability. Just kind of a question for you guys: what would you think that a no effect leader that deployed at 5 in cunning villainy, what's the stats be?
Are we leaning more an aggressive leader or a more controlling leader, I guess is my question.
I guess the question is kind of just looking at Boba's stat line of 4-7. Would a leader with no effect on either side that deploys at 5 for a 4-7 be good enough?
No, I don't think so, personally. I know
The
Dudeness
right
say yes.
relevant traits, absolutely.
I think what pushed Boba over to being really OP was his ability to ramp you, to be able to play 8 resources on turn 5 or on turn 4 or even turn 3 if you played resupply or laser
Or
tech,
even
right?
turn 1 playing 3 resources because you played a unit, McClunky, ready the resource, play the unit, you play with McClunky, right? Like it's just a broken ability straight up. Generating free resources. Like if they just changed the action to actually in action, you had to tap Boba Fett to get that extra resource back. That might have been just enough to make him not broken. But as it was, the dude was clearly broken. Like I don't.
And I guess that's kind of my question is that I think we can all agree that Dudeness is right. Like the ability is strong, and then you've also got this really strong body, both put together. That ability on a weaker body, totally different story.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think the weaker body would have had to have been 6 HP, just to be very clear. I don't think the problem was his 4 attack. I think it was a 7 HP. Because 7 at that amount, like I even playing against Quinlan, 7's like, oh, I can get to 6, but I can't get to 7. Which is why I think Quinlan's actually pretty good. Like I know in set 1, had Boba Fett been a 4-6, then I don't think Iden would have been the ideal control leader. I 100% would have thought that Krennic would have been the correct leader to have, because then a single Stormtrooper, yep, thank you, would have been able to kill him with ECL in 1 hit for 3 costs, doing 2 damage to itself, making it attack for 4, and then doing 2 damage to Boba Fett, killing him at 6. I think that would have been a very common play line, but due to the fact he had 7 HP, we had to rely on Steadfast Battalion, which was like much worse.
For those that didn't read the article or watch the live stream, they did talk about how they had, when they were designing the leaders, they originally had them at a little bit different stat line. So like Vader was a 5'10", Luke was a 4'9", Sabine was a 2'7", and that would have definitely made an interesting effect in the game if our leaders were more powerful, and they were kind of exceptionally powerful. But they decided to scale some things back, and I guess probably Boba was a 4'8", I imagine, and instead of scaling him back 2 like the other leaders, they scaled him back 1, and they said like, oh, we're going to take a chance, like we think this might be okay costed. They were worried about other things as well. It should be clear as well. They were worried, like, is Sabine too fast? And they had to make a decision, and they made a decision to release him the way he was, and that was the one angle where it was too strong.
Yeah, and not for nothing, when you're creating a game, not that I've ever done this myself, but like I can only imagine how hard it is to be like, like now we have metas and like you can kind of run some data and understand a little bit, but like it's hard to conceptualize what the gameplay is going to play, what numbers actually matter, right? Because like we're talking, obviously you have like takedown, which is 5, right? So you wouldn't want Boba to be like a 5-5, right? You taken down, so you don't want that. But I don't know, yeah, exactly.
JD says hi.
Exactly, and he's even worse. He's a 5-4 too, right? Like that's even worse. So it's a weird thing. Obviously, it was a little bit of an oversight, and devs even admitted that on their end. I think they did the right thing here at the end of the day, even though I don't agree it was needed. I think it was better off for the community as a whole. So for those reasons, I accept.
If you guys haven't read the article they released on it, I highly suggest you do. He does say at the end, towards the end of it, they made a mistake. Hopefully they won't make mistakes again in the future. But if you never make a mistake, that pretty much means you're not taking any risks either. So there's a fine balance you have to strike there when you're designing a game. At the start of a game, right, it's harder to make a baseline when you're designing all of this from scratch. And now that they've had a few sets, they can kind of design stuff in future sets with a better baseline understanding and how to balance and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I want to say for those that are new to card games in general, in other card games, bannings happen. The devs try really hard to make things balanced. As we've talked about, it's hard. If we look at, these are older games, so it is harder. They didn't have as much foresight or knowing what things will be. But if you look at almost every card game, there are going to be those cards which were incredibly stronger when they were first game released than even the cards they make now are. There's going to be certain areas which they're not able to account for, and that was this area here. Especially the leader mechanic, it's a different element than just like a deck of cards. So it also has a special kind of place and a special balancing that needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be interesting moving forward to see what they do. Personally, I hope they make another mistake at some point because, like Dude said, that means they're trying new, fun, interesting things. And to get cool cards, like I'm a big fan of Palpatine right now. Pick up the deck tech on that, put out Thursday. But I think that's a really cool, interesting design. And I don't know if he's busted, but he seemed really interesting. And he's one of those leaders that, like, as we get further into the game, like he can just keep getting better because as we get better and more efficient cards, it's going to be, you can always just play the best cards in whatever 2 colors he's in. Like right now, I'm playing him in blue. I get to play Luke Skywalker, one of the best cards in the game, and I get to play Cad Bane, which I think is going to be one of the best cards in the game. So like, I get to play two of the best cards, and that seems like real fun. And a deck that like no other deck can play those two cards together. Not a single one.
Well, they can just have to pay the aspect penalty.
Sure, yeah, but you're gonna pay 9 for a 7 cost, which then is a lot worse at that point, right? Like,
Say I won't.
I do.
You won't.
I do want to say though that we did get some other interesting things from this announcement. So we did hear, now they mentioned this before, but we did hear them mention rotation, and they said that they're going to announce the rotation next month, I think, during a stream.
Yeah,
during one of their live streams. For those that are new to TCGs, Dudeness, do you mind explaining what is rotation? What is that? What does that happen in other? Does it happen in other games?
every card game has rotation if it survives long enough to reach that point to need a rotation. But we don't know how that's going to look in this game, so this is all pure speculation based off of other games because they might do something different here. But usually that means an older set of cards is rotated out, and then the new set of cards that are coming out is rotated in to replace them. But we could see a thing here where instead of cards, it's leaders instead, or combination of one or the other, or we don't know.
And Jrod, what is normally the purpose of rotation?
So it's really hard to balance like 1,000,005 cards together. So rotation allows for designers and developers to have a somewhat easier time balancing all the cards that are currently out in the most common played format, which this will be Premier. That's typically what we're looking for.
And they did mention that after a card is in Premier, that it will rotate to some kind of external format. And so what that means, what did I said extra, yeah.
Eternal, an eternal format where all the cards will always be legal, presuming they don't suspend a card in that format as well. But they did go out and say that Boba Fett will be legal in this eternal format, even though he is suspended in Premier.
Yes, and so once cards are no longer available to be played in Premier, because for other games at least, the sets that they were in are no longer within the legal block, then those new cards plus the old cards are all legal in that more extended format. So that's one way that they do rotation. As Dude has mentioned, almost every game does. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the probably notable exception of a game that does not have a rotation, and we can see a lot of problems in that game because of it.
I think Fab only does a leader rotation,
Yes, they do, a retirement system.
Which would be interesting in this game, but I don't know. But their sets are also different. Where like their sets only put out like I'll use an example for this game. Like it'd be like if the devs were like, okay, hey, this set is only for cunning, villainy, and heroism, aggression.
Yeah,
that's the only card you're gonna get from this set. That's basically all their sets is like they have a specific thing that comes out with like leaders and stuff like that. So
they have different classes for those.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I don't think it would work for this game personally, but I mean, I'm interested to see what the devs cook up for this because it'll be interesting to see how they decide to do that. Because I'm sure you have to rotate the leaders as well at some point. Otherwise, you're just gonna have like infinite leaders, and you're gonna have a hard time like always making better leaders to make them interesting.
Yeah,
especially when you come out with 18 a set.
Right.
Yes.
There is something I wanted to note that we never actually said. That Boba Fett is only suspended, which means that they can evaluate at a later date and decide whether or not he deserves to be unsuspended. This is not a permanent suspension. I thought that was interesting. They basically used the word suspended instead of banning to work this into the whole thing.
And they did say that they're going to every set. So it seems like they said he's going to be banned for the entire, or suspended, for the entire set. And that every set they will reevaluate the suspension list and decide what they need to do.
I think one of the main reasons why they took this approach here was because one, obviously his what he did during the PQ season was relatively dominant, but also like you can also put that up to like people were thinking Sabine was going to be the best and her counter is Boba Fett. But I think what really happened is that the best two cards out of this next set slot perfectly right into Boba Fett green as he was. So all it's going to do is bring up his power level. And he was already pretty dominant, so I think the safe bet was to do that.
That's potential. I do want to mention that they did also on the stream talk about, they didn't use these words explicitly, but they did kind of mention a watch list. They said they were watching certain cards, and to me that kind of seemed like if not an explicit, it wasn't explicit, but it was kind of an implicit, hey, these are the decks or the things we might suspend in the future, and those were Sabine and ECL. And that was just interesting to hear that. Like, the fact that Boba, one of the reasons they mentioned for Boba suspension is he was be able to play in a variety of different colors. And they did say they were debating, do they suspend like Boba's armor or Boba Fett or Fire Spray, sorry. And so we heard them kind of talking about different options, but they did here mention that there are other leaders or other bases even that might get suspended. So anything is open to a suspension.
They should suspend you.
Yeah, they also mentioned that suspending straight up the leader was also the cleanest. Just get him out of there. Don't have to worry about, hey, this card can only be played with this guy, or you can only have like, they were talking about like a restricted list or something. You can only play like so many of these cards with this leader or something. But all that seems way more messier than just outright suspending the dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is the news that we had to start off Twilight of the Republic was before the set was released. It was in between the pre-release and the release date to see how it's going to affect the set 3 meta.
I think it was the best possible news to come before the set 3, honestly.
I agree, and I do think that's good to ban him with like not during a planetary qualifying or any kind of major competitive scene kind of bracket. And so it's clean, simple.
Clean, simple, and they bring it up. That way you know exactly what to prepare for during the planetary qualifiers. There's no surprises going to be coming. It's already gone. You can start planning and testing for that.
And I know that Late Night, the Bonta Network, and McClunky Gaming are doing a really cool creator clash, like team event, where like they had like iconic pairings, so like Maul versus Kenobi. They had Ahsoka versus Grievous, which is a little bit not iconic, but basically a bunch of iconic, like Palp versus Yoda, all set 3 leaders, and they're pairing them up and playing and bringing out some somewhat competitive decks. I mean, I imagine they're relatively competitive, trying to win the event, but should be pretty interesting. And I think that might at least give us a little like taste of what we could see for set 3. Obviously, you won't see any Sabine or anything like that because there's only set 3 leaders.
That'll be a kind of first foretaste into what these decks will look like. So, talking about decks in Twilight of the Republic, how did your guys' pre-releases go? We weren't able to get an episode recorded last time talking about them.
I mean, they went pretty easy because I played the clear and away best leader in sealed, which is Anakin Skywalker, the man, the myth, the legend himself. Being able to trade up anytime you want to for just a little base damage turns out is pretty good.
Which color did you run with him?
My first one, I ran yellow. That deck went 3-0, crushed it, easy game. The next deck I felt was almost better, but it only went 2-1 despite having General's Blade and Hayang, which I was able to deploy Anakin and equip both of those one of the games for the win, so that was pretty cool.
Any notable pulls?
Actually, no. I went to only one pre-release. We did 2 that night. I opened up 17 packs total, and it wasn't until the very last pack, which was the very last prize pack, I pulled one single legendary Isla Sakura.
Okay. Jrod, what about yourself? How did your pre-releases go?
So I went to 2 of them. Both of them were at the Armory in Fairhaven, Massachusetts. The first one I did was Friday, and I went into that one with my unusual stance of I'm just going to have fun and play something that's interesting and cool. And to me, the exploit mechanic was pretty interesting and different. So I definitely wanted to try that out for the first time. And I was gifted a pretty easy Newt green deck. I really wish I did have Dooku instead of Newt, but Newt was still pretty interesting. I played the green base because I could to try it out, and it definitely cost me my first round because of it. I think I would have easily won the game if I had a 30-point base, so learned my lesson from that. Immediately ripped that card in half and threw it away. Just kidding, I didn't rip it. Don't ever do that. I still actually have the card, so I definitely didn't rip it. But so get rid of the base, put a 30 HP base in, and proceeded to go 2-1 after that. So 2-2 overall. Not a great performance by me. Usually I'm maybe X-1 at most, but has had a lot of fun with that. The deck was really cool and interesting, and it was like a little puzzle every turn of how to like get as much value out of my exploit as possible. And I had like the 5/6 ambush guy, and then I had like 2 trenches. So like I was like 5/6 ambush guy, trade into that, kill that guy and live, and the next turn kill another guy and trade, and then I'm gonna trench, and then I'm gonna get that guy back, and I'm gonna exploit him again and kill something else. And it was crazy value and super fun. The second one, my first pack, I opened up the legendary Ahsoka Tano. Obviously I got Ahsoka in the kit already, so I already knew what I was playing. I got my girl, had to play my girl. I unfortunately had to play red-green because my yellow was trash, even though I also had a hyperspace Enfys Nest, but I ended up just splashing both of them and just saying YOLO. Ended up going 3-1, only losing to, I think, who did I lose to? I lost to my buddy who has beaten me like 3 times in a row since I faced him, so I need to make sure I beat him next time. Nick, if you're listening, coming for you.
So I have a little bit of pushback from Dudeness's response. I actually don't know if Anakin's the best leader in sealed. I did very well. I did a release every day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I was very lucky in that way. And the first two, I decided to play Ahsoka. And Ahsoka was a ton of fun. First off, you only get to play these leaders once. And so I wanted to take advantage of that. But I found the Ahsoka Green very strong. In my first pool, I opened up Clone. And the fun play I made with that was in the last round, my opponent played Cad Bane. Very good card. Captured a bunch of my things. And then the next turn, I played Clone, copy his Cad, capture his Cad. So that was really fun. I did end up cheating in the first round. In the first round of the first match, it wasn't intentional cheating, but we were unsure of the rule. So when you clone something, does it copy the attribute, the cost of the card you copy? And so my opponent asked, and I called the judge, and the judge explained that it costs 7 still, regardless of whatever cost of the unit I copied. And so we played with it as that was the ruling, because that's what the judge said. However, afterwards, I did write on the question under the Discord asking for a judge's ruling, and they said that it would actually copy the cost. So my opponent wanted to play the 3/6 card that has exploit 2 and cost 6 and capture something that has the same cost as a card. Yeah, so I'd copied Kiari-Mundi in that game. And so he wanted to capture it, but he was unable to. So I ended up winning because of that cheating, but that happens. And in the second one, I really didn't have anything great. That's why I kind of played Ahsoka, but she is really strong. And I pulled a Dudeness. I went pretty heavy into space, Batch Brothers, and the 1/4 for 2 that lets you attack with a Republic unit. And when you play him, when you only have Ahsoka and one other unit, and you play that card, you're Ahsoka swinging for 7, and it's glorious. In that one, I ran Maul in my Ahsoka deck because I pulled them all in that second pool, and that was fun. In my final event, I ended up going with Mace Yellow. I really wanted to play Anakin, but I didn't pull an Anakin, so I went with Mace Yellow instead. In that pool, I did have a Cad Bane. And I also played that off aspect, and it was a lot of fun. I played more of the controlling style in the game, and basically, though, both games I won I played a Cad, and it was game over. So that was really fun. Are there any cards that you guys see in Twilight of the Republic that you're looking at with interest that you think will be used a lot, or you think cause interesting gameplay?
Cad Bane. I think Cad's cool. I think Archu is going to be really good and probably going to be a staple for a long time. But the best thing about Archu is that he's really hard to kill on turn 1. So, people are like, oh, it's so hard to turn on Coordinate. But you just play Archu on turn 1. He's not dying until turn 2 the earliest, then probably turn 3. So, it's definitely easier when you have big butt units to keep Coordinate on than I think people expected. So, we'll definitely see how that plays out. But so far, I think Cad Bane and Archu are kind of my 2 favorite cards that I've been enjoying from the new set.
What about you, Dudeness? Any cards that stand out to you from set 3?
Nothing that truly stands out for me right now, honestly.
I think for me now there are 2 of them. Is something that I think is very interesting. We're seeing kind of a pricing of singles right now that maybe is closer to set 1 than to set 2, and I'm interested to see which of these cards will kind of maintain their price, which will drop, which will rise, if any. And it does seem like there's a lot of product, which is a nice thing to see. But now there are 2 of them is something that I think will be an interesting card to keep tabs on, to see if people will how the people will use it in decks.
Yeah, it's definitely the most expensive card, I think, in the set right now, right? Now there were 2.
Mm-hmm.
So
for those that follow card games, you may, and for those that don't, set 3 of a game is usually a very important indicator on how that game will do long term. Set 1, there's usually, if it's a decent game, there'll be some hype around it. It goes in, it's a new kid on the block. People want to try it out. Set 3 is the time when we're seeing, is this game going to last long term? So this is a very important time in Star Wars Unlimited. I would say, if not as important, maybe more important than the release of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited for this set. I think it's going to be great. So we'll see. I mean, I think there also could be a pretty decent Ahsoka Now There Are 2 deck as well. Being able to flip her, and then Now There Are 2 for her, and then kind of go from there would be pretty interesting. I don't know. The game is just going to be so much fun with this set. I think it's going to add a lot, especially with Mr. Fett leaving, and it opens up a lot of stuff. I definitely was anti getting rid of him because I'm always hesitant on that, especially when we're so early on into the game. We don't even have a full game yet. We can assume next set, Jump to Lightspeed, will probably lean at least a little bit more into space. So, which means that the space that we have right now in the game isn't truly what their goal for the space of the game is, the space arena. You know what I mean? So I think there definitely were ways to go about it without banning Boba. I think I'm happy for now, and I'm glad they did the suspension thing, so that way, if what I'm saying is true, they can bring him back and things will be good again. But I'm excited to see what people do with the space that Boba leaves open. Hopefully, Sabine doesn't get too crazy, but maybe I do agree with Faith a little bit there, where he said that you won't like you can target Sabine more if she's the problem, because there isn't really like another deck after Sabine that I'm like, oh, that's definitely gonna be a problem. I don't see another deck like that right now. So if you can just kind of target out Sabine and make sure you beat her, you're probably pretty good.
Dudeness, any final thoughts from you about set 3 or about Boba banning?
I do think it's the best decision FFG has made yet. Personally, it squashed a lot of the qualms in the community about set 3, about will it change or the meta, this and that and the other. And like I said, the Spectre haunting Star Wars Unlimited is gone.
And what decks do you guys plan on playing into set 3 meta?
I intend to make some sort of Kylo aggro work. My goal is to make a non-Sabine aggro work.
Soka.
And what about you, Jrod?
I'm definitely a Palpy boy right now. Palp 2, not Palp 1, Palp 2. That's where my love's at right now. It's so much fun. And I've been playing a lot in the Bonta Network Discord with them in there, because the people who want to play more. If you want to play with me more, hop on our Discord and hit me up and we can play. But I've been playing in there because there's more people who are active more often. And they stream a lot as well, so it's fun to go in there and play in front of some people. And whenever I bring my Palp deck out, everyone's like, ooh, a Palp deck, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to get slapped around, right? And then I win a lot of the time. They're like, that deck's pretty cool. I get people in my DMs like, oh, what's the list? So that's why I made a deck tech on that, because I thought it would be pretty cool to kind of share it with the larger community. I think the deck's pretty fun. It's definitely not easy to pick up, I'll be honest. It definitely takes a little bit of time, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty fun and interesting. Planning like 2-3 turns ahead with the flip and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, avoiding the aspect penalty too is an interesting thing about that deck when I was playing it. I would say I'm looking forward to returning with Krennic, the King, and also interested in Maul and Obi-Wan. Maul is definitely just a favorite character of mine, and Obi-Wan is a really cool lore-wise character, I think. And I love the idea of a Force-themed deck, so that's what I'm going to be looking forward to playing. But
check out the deck tech he did for Obi-Wan on the channel. Check it out.
Yes, the self-promotion. Thank you. Well, it was an exciting week in Star Wars Unlimited with a ban, with a new set. So we're going to have to look forward to see what happens next. Any final thoughts from you guys?
Yes, I have one. Don't sleep on Evacuate.
May the Force be with you.
And with your spirit. Hope you guys have a good day, and we'll see you next time on El Maneuver.